It happened on a Sunday, when the house was quiet enough for secrets to breathe. The son had come home early from work, the kind of early that feels like luck until it isn't. The sun poured through the hallway windows in gold slants, dust floating in the air like slow confetti. He heard laughter first, soft, low, unfamiliar. Not his father's. Not the kind of laughter that belonged to that house. It came from the living room. He stepped closer, slow, careful. The sound of voices shifted, then a pause, and then that sharp, unmistakable sound, a kiss. The son stopped breathing. He turned the corner and saw them. The woman, his stepmother, leaned against the wall, her hand cupping another man's face. His suit jacket was half undone, her hair tangled from his touch. It wasn't hurried or guilty. It was something worse, familiar. The man stepped back when he noticed movement. The son froze. Their eyes met for just a second, and in that moment, something silent and final passed between them, a recognition of damage already done. The man left through the back door without a word. The woman didn't chase him. She just turned, straightened her hair, and looked at the son like this was another chore to be done. "How long have you been standing there?" she asked quietly. "Long enough." She nodded, almost approvingly. "Then you know." He waited for her to deny it, to make it easier for both of them, but she didn't. "Why?" he asked. Her lips curved faintly. "Why not?" It was the kind of answer that wasn't meant to be understood. That evening, his father came home. The woman smiled the way she always did, served dinner, asked about his day. Her voice didn't shake once. The son watched them. Watched the way she reached to refill his father's glass. The way his father looked at her with trust still alive in his eyes. He wanted to scream. Instead, he said, "You look happy." His father smiled. "We are." The woman's eyes flicked to the son, calm, deliberate. "We try to be." That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat in the dark, replaying the scene again and again. The way she'd kissed that man, the stillness after. The faint taste of betrayal that lingered even though it wasn't his to taste. He thought about telling his father. About what would happen if he did. But every version ended the same way, with silence. So he started doing what silence demands. He watched. Over the next week, he noticed everything, the late night calls. The perfume she wore when she said she was going to the market. The new bottle of wine she kept hidden behind the cleaning supplies. He didn't confront her, not yet. Because he'd learned something about secrets, they don't destroy people when they're discovered. They destroy them when they're seen and left to rot. So he waited. And the longer he waited, the more he realized she knew he was waiting. On Thursday, she found him in the garden. The air smelled of soil and rain. "You're angry," she said. He kept his back to her. "You think?" "You shouldn't be," she said softly. "It has nothing to do with you. You kissed him in my house. It's your father's house. Same difference." She sighed. "You sound just like him." "Good," he said. "Someone should." There was a pause. Then she said, "You don't know what your father's done." He turned. "What does that mean?" "It means you're young enough to think betrayal has sides." He frowned. "You think you're justified?" "No," she said. "Just human." That night, she left her phone on the counter. A mistake, or maybe an invitation. He saw the name on the screen when it buzzed, unknown number. The message read, "He knows. Handle it." He stared at it for a long time before deleting it. Then he set the phone back exactly where it had been. When she came down later, her hair still damp from a shower, She looked at him and smiled faintly. "Good night," she said. "Good night," he answered. Neither of them meant it. The next morning, his father didn't come down for breakfast. The woman made coffee anyway, humming softly as if nothing had changed. He waited until she left the kitchen, then climbed the stairs. His father's door was closed. He knocked. No answer. He turned the handle and stepped inside. The room was still. Too still. The air smelled faintly of alcohol and something else. He moved closer to the bed. The glass on the nightstand was tipped over, liquid staining the rug. His father lay half on the pillow, half on the sheets, skin pale under the thin light. The sun dropped the mug he was holding. It shattered. And from the hallway came the woman's voice, soft and even, almost kind. "I told you some betrayals have no sides." When he turned, she was standing in the doorway, her eyes calm. Her smile the same one she'd worn when she kissed that man. "Now," she said, "you understand what I mean." He didn't move for a long time. The sound of the mug breaking still hung in the air. Sharp and thin, like the echo of something that refused to die. His father didn't stir. The sheets were too still, the silence too absolute. The woman stood in the doorway, one hand resting lightly on the frame. Her robe pale against the dim light. She looked almost peaceful. "What did you do?" he whispered. She tilted her head. "What I had to." He took a step toward her. "You." "Careful," she said softly. "If you shout, the neighbors will hear. And you'll need them to believe you." He froze. "Believe me about what?" "That you tried to save him," she said. "Because no one's going to believe he was dead when you found him." He stared at her. "You're insane." She smiled faintly. "No, dear. I'm prepared." She turned and walked down the hall, her voice drifting behind her. "Call someone. You should." He stumbled forward, reaching for his father's wrist. Cold. The kind of cold that never leaves. He pressed his fingers against the skin anyway, counting heartbeats that didn't come. Then he pulled his hand back and stared at the glass on the rug. The smell was wrong. Sweet. Chemical. Not just alcohol. He stood, every nerve in his body tightening. "You killed him." Her voice floated back from downstairs. "We killed him." By the time the police arrived, she was crying on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. Her story was simple. She'd found them both unconscious. The son trying to wake his father after a fight. The officers asked questions. She gave perfect answers. Her hands never shook. Her eyes stayed wide and wet. When they asked him what happened, his voice came out hollow. "He wasn't breathing when I found him." "Did you argue?" He looked at her. She was already shaking her head, her expression filled with practiced grief. He said, "No." The report would later call it an overdose. Accidental. She signed the statement with neat, careful handwriting. When they wheeled the body away, she touched his shoulder. "He'd want us to stay strong," she whispered. He wanted to break her hand. Instead, he nodded. That night, the house felt heavier than ever. The shadows seemed to press closer, the air thick with something unspoken. He sat on the couch, staring at the wall, listening to her moving in the kitchen. The sound of a cork pulling from a bottle. 2 glasses clinking. Then her voice, "You should drink something. It'll help." He didn't move. After a moment, she came into the room carrying 2 glasses of wine. She handed him one, smiling faintly. "To him," she said. He stared at the glass. "You poisoned him." She laughed softly. "No, he poisoned himself. I just made sure he wouldn't fail this time." Her calmness made his skin crawl. You think that's love? He asked. I think that's mercy. He slammed the glass onto the table, spilling red across the wood. You could have left. Her smile faded. So could you. For a second, something flickered behind her eyes, sadness or maybe exhaustion. You think I did this to hurt him. But I did it to end him. There's a difference. He shook his head. You're sick. She stepped closer. No, dear, I'm free. That night, he dreamed of his father's face. But it wasn't the stillness that haunted him, it was the eyes, open and aware, looking at him as if he were the one standing in the doorway with the glass. He woke drenched in sweat. The clock on the nightstand read 3:17. Downstairs, the sound of the refrigerator hummed softly. He went to the kitchen. The wine glasses were gone. So was the bottle. Only one thing remained on the counter, a phone, his father's. Screen lit up with a single unsent message. She knows about us. If I disappear, tell him. The rest was cut off. He stared at it until the light went out. Then he looked toward the staircase. The woman was standing at the top, her face half hidden in the dark. Couldn't sleep? She asked. He didn't answer. She smiled. Neither can I. Guilt's a terrible thing to share. And then she turned away, disappearing into the dark, her footsteps slow and even, as if she were counting each one. He stood there until morning, waiting for the sound to stop. It never did. The morning came gray and silent, the kind of light that doesn't warm anything. The son sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone he'd found hours earlier. The message still glowed faintly on the screen. She knows about us. If I disappear, tell him. That half-sentence throbbed in his mind like a wound that refused to close. The us. He couldn't stop looking at that word. Who did it mean? When the woman came downstairs, she looked immaculate. Her robe replaced by a black dress, her hair tied neatly at the nape of her neck. Grief looked good on her. You didn't sleep, she said softly. He didn't answer. Are you going to eat something? No. She poured herself coffee, slow and deliberate. You shouldn't torture yourself. He wouldn't want that. He looked up. Would he want to be dead? Her hand paused mid-air, then resumed pouring. You still think I did this? I know you did. She set the cup down, the porcelain tapping against the table. Then why are you still here? He stared at her. Because I want to understand why. She smiled faintly. No, you want to understand if you could have done it too. He left the house after that, wandering through town with the phone in his pocket, replaying every word she'd said. People stopped him on the street, offering condolences, empty sympathy. He nodded, said thank you, said nothing. At the pharmacy, while paying for a bottle of water, he asked the clerk quietly, Do you remember if someone bought these recently? And showed him the photo of the pills from his father's nightstand. The clerk frowned. Yeah, regular customer. The woman from the big house on Birch Lane. Said they were for her husband. He left without saying a word. When he stepped back into the street, he realized he was gripping the phone so tightly it hurt. He opened it again, stared at the unfinished message. She knows about us. Us. Not just her and his father. Someone else. He opened the call log. There it was, one number repeated over and over again in the weeks before his father's death. Unknown caller. But not completely unfamiliar. He'd seen it before. In her phone. The same number that had sent the message. He knows. Handle it. By the time he got home, the sky had darkened again. The house looked smaller, older, like the truth had aged it overnight. The woman was sitting in the living room, staring out the window, wineglass half full. She didn't turn when he entered. "You went somewhere," she said. "Yes. To dig. To confirm." She smiled without looking at him. "And what did you find?" He stepped closer. "That you didn't just kill him. You weren't alone." She turned her head slightly, just enough for him to see the curve of her mouth. "No one ever is." "Who's D?" Her smile faded. "Why does everyone keep asking me that?" "Because he sent you messages." "I get a lot of messages." This one said, "He knows. Handle it." She finally looked at him then, eyes sharp as glass. "And you think that means I killed your father?" "I think it means you planned it." "And what if he was D?" she asked softly. "What?" She stood. "What if he wasn't warning me about someone else? What if he was warning me about you?" He blinked. "Me?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He told me you'd never forgive him. That you hated me for replacing her. That you watched us. You think I didn't know?" "That's insane." "Is it?" she said. "He was terrified of you, you know. You followed him. Read his messages. Listened outside our room. You wanted him to confess something, didn't you? You wanted to make him pay for what he did to your mother." "Stop," he said, stepping back. "Do you even remember that night?" she whispered. He froze. Because suddenly, he didn't. Not clearly. Not anymore. There was shouting, yes. Glass breaking. His mother's voice. His father's. His own. Then nothing. She took a slow step closer. "You told him you wished he were dead." He shook his head. "You're lying." She leaned in, her breath cold against his ear. "Maybe. But lies only work when they sound like memories." He stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. "You poisoned him. And you poured the drink," she said. "We're both guilty, if that's what helps you sleep. Why are you doing this?" Her expression softened, almost kind. "Because you needed someone to blame." He backed toward the door. "Stay away from me." She tilted her head. "You're just like him. You think you can run from what you did." "I didn't do anything." "Didn't you?" He reached for the door. Her voice followed him as he stepped into the hall. "If you really want to know who killed him, look in the mirror." That's where the story always ends. He didn't look back. He ran until the house disappeared behind him. Until the sound of her voice was nothing but an echo buried in the dark. But deep down, he knew she was right about one thing. The truth had never belonged to either of them. It had always belonged to whoever could live with it longest. He didn't stop running until the road ended at the edge of town, where the houses gave way to fields and the air stopped smelling like lies. His chest ached, his throat burned, but the silence was almost merciful. He leaned against a fence post and tried to steady his breathing. Her words wouldn't leave him. "If you really want to know who killed him, look in the mirror." He told himself it was manipulation, another one of her games. But when he closed his eyes, the fragments came back. His mother crying, his father shouting, a glass breaking, and his own voice cutting through the noise like something sharp. He'd been young, angry, small, but he'd said it. "I wish you were dead." The memory hit him like a bruise he didn't know was still there. He went to the motel on the highway. The same one his father used to stay at during their arguments. The clerk didn't look up when he paid for the room. Inside, everything smelled of dust and stale air. He sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the mirror across from him. It was cracked near the corner, splitting his reflection in two. One half looked terrified, the other half looked familiar. He pulled out his father's phone again, the one he'd taken from the house. The battery was low, but there was one message draft he hadn't seen before, buried under old files. It read, "She's making me choose. If I don't do it, she'll tell him. But he doesn't remember." He read it again and again. He doesn't remember. He dropped the phone onto the bed, his breath catching. What had he forgotten? A soft knock came at the door. He froze. Another knock, this time slower. He crossed the room, heart pounding, and opened it halfway. She stood there. The woman. Her dress was black, her eyes calm, the same stillness she'd worn after the funeral. "How did you find me?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "I didn't. You came to the same place he did." He stepped back, but she didn't follow. "I know what you think you saw," she said. "But memories lie. They rearrange themselves to protect you. Stop talking like you know me." "I do," she said. "You forget, I watched you grow up. I know how easily you believe what you need to." He clenched his fists. "What do you want?" "The same thing I wanted from him. The truth. I already know the truth." "No," she whispered. "You only know the version that keeps you innocent." He turned away, pacing. "He killed my mother. He poisoned himself. You." "I didn't poison him," she said. "I told him to confess. He couldn't." She took a step closer. "He was going to tell you everything. But he knew you'd hate him for it. So he made me promise to protect you from the memory." He stared at her. "Protect me from what?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her bag and handed him a small flash drive. "It's all there. His last recording. Listen to it when you're ready." He didn't take it. "You're lying again." She smiled. "Maybe. But lies can't kill you. Guilt can." Then she turned and walked down the hallway, her heels soft against the carpet. He stood there, staring at the flash drive in his hand, the weight of it unbearable. He didn't play it right away. He waited until night fell. Until the world was dark enough to hide the sound of a confession. He plugged it into his laptop. The file had no name. Just a timestamp. He pressed play. His father's voice came through, rough and quiet. "If you're hearing this, I'm gone. And if she kept her promise, you don't remember what happened that night. But you should. You deserve to." A pause. Breathing. "Your mother didn't fall. You pushed her. You were angry. She slapped you, you hit back, and she fell. I told the police she slipped. I told you she died in her sleep. You cried for weeks, and I told you she forgave you, because I couldn't let you carry that." The sun froze. His throat closed. "She stayed with me afterward," the voice continued. "Your stepmother. She knew the truth. She kept it because I asked her to. Because I couldn't lose you too." The recording ended. For a long time, he couldn't breathe. His whole body felt hollow, as if the truth had scooped him out from the inside. When he finally looked up, he caught his reflection in the mirror. The crack split his face in half again, one side the child who believed in innocence. The other the man who'd inherited his father's guilt. He reached out and touched the glass. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. But the mirror didn't care. It just showed him what had always been there. The same blood, the same sin, the same echo of a hand raised once in anger. Outside, the wind pushed against the window, carrying her voice with it, soft, steady, unbroken. "Now you remember. So tell me, who needs forgiving now?" He didn't remember falling asleep, only waking to the sound of rain against the window. The world outside was blurred, heavy with gray. And the air inside the motel smelled like something that had ended long before he arrived. The laptop sat open beside him, the final words of his father's voice still lingering in the silence. She kept it because I asked her to. Because I couldn't lose you too. He'd replayed the message until the sound had become meaningless, just a noise. An echo from a man who had destroyed everything in the name of love. But what gutted him most wasn't his father's guilt. It was the memory his mind had begun to give back. His mother's hand raised, his own arm jerking in response, the weight of something falling, the sound of her body hitting the floor. And then the screaming, not hers, his. He pressed his palms to his eyes until he saw red. He wanted to crawl out of himself, to claw through the skin and leave the truth behind. But there was no undoing it. The woman had been right. He'd been protecting the wrong person all along. By the time he left the motel, the rain had stopped. He drove without direction, the flash drive still in his pocket like a confession he couldn't throw away. When the gas light came on, he realized he'd driven back toward the house. Or what was left of it. The police tape was gone, the grass grown wild around the edges. The windows were boarded up, but the walls still stood, scarred, quiet, waiting. He walked through the side door. Each step stirring the smell of dust and wine and something older, something sour. In the living room, he found her. The woman sat in the same chair she'd used the night his father died. Dressed in gray this time, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't look surprised to see him. I knew you'd come back, she said. He swallowed hard. You lied to me. No, I told you what you were ready to hear. He stepped closer. You should have told me the truth. You weren't ready for it. I'm ready now. She smiled sadly. I think you've been ready since the night she fell. He flinched. She stood, moving toward him slowly. He thought protecting you would save you. But guilt doesn't work that way. It waits. It grows. He shook his head. He was trying to fix it. By marrying me? He hesitated. Did you love him? Her eyes softened. I tried to. But you can't love a man who's already decided to punish himself. They stood in silence for a long time. The wind moved through the broken glass, stirring the curtain fragments that still hung from the windows. Finally, she said, he didn't deserve forgiveness. But maybe you do. He looked at her, exhausted. How? By doing what he couldn't. She handed him a small metal box. Inside was the gun. The same one from the night everything ended. The metal was clean now, polished. He stared at it. You want me to kill you? She shook her head. No, I want you to choose not to. Her voice softened. That's how you break it. The pattern, the blood, the guilt. Someone has to stop repeating it. He set the gun back in the box. I can't forgive either of you. I'm not asking you to, she said. Just forgive yourself. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the fireplace. The ash was still there, a faint gray layer on the bricks. He dropped the flash drive into it. It hissed, melted, disappeared. When he turned back, the woman was watching him with something like relief. You did the right thing, she said. Did I? Yes, she whispered, because now it's over. He left the house before dark. The rain had started again, thin and steady, cleansing the dust from his hands, his hair, his eyes. At the edge of the property, he looked back once. The woman was still at the window, her silhouette framed by the fading light. She didn't wave. She didn't need to. For the first time, he understood what she'd meant all along. Some truths aren't meant to be carried, only buried deep enough to stop echoing. He walked to the car, the smell of wet earth sharp in the air, and whispered, almost to himself, "I remember now. And I'm still alive." The wind took the words, scattering them across the empty road. And for the first time in his life, that felt like enough. Weeks passed before he spoke again. The silence was both punishment and medicine, something he didn't deserve but needed all the same. He rented a small apartment above a laundromat in another town, where the hum of machines filled the quiet spaces in his head. He took a job repairing old furniture, the kind that needed patience more than skill. Every day he worked with his hands until his mind went numb, sanding away splinters that reminded him of what couldn't be fixed. At night, when the streets went dark and the washing machines below rattled like distant thunder, he'd sit by the window and listen. Sometimes, in the sound of water cycling through the pipes, he imagined the whisper of her voice, soft, calm, steady. "You see now. It's over." But endings never feel clean. They stain the edges of what comes after. One morning, he received a letter. No return address, just his name written in the same careful handwriting that had once labeled the pill bottles on his father's nightstand. He hesitated before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "I've left the house for good. They're tearing it down next week. Whatever's still there, let it burn twice if it needs to. We both earned the silence that's coming." At the bottom, a line added in smaller script. "Forgive him, if not for what he did, then for what he couldn't bear to remember." There was no signature. She didn't need one. He folded the letter carefully, set it inside a drawer, and didn't touch it again. When spring came, he drove back, not to the house, but to the field where it had stood. The air smelled faintly of ash and new grass. Wildflowers had started growing through the cracks in the foundation. He stood there for a long time, the wind cold against his face. There was no sign of her, no sign of the life they'd ruined. Just the sound of something rebuilding itself quietly, without permission. He knelt, scooped a handful of earth, and let it fall through his fingers. It didn't feel like forgiveness. It felt like weight leaving. On the drive back, he stopped at a diner off the highway. The waitress poured his coffee and said, "You look like you've been somewhere far." He smiled a little. "I have." She nodded. "Did you find what you were looking for?" He looked out the window at the road stretching into the horizon. "Not exactly," he said. "But I found what I needed." That night, in his apartment, he built something for the first time that wasn't meant to replace what was broken. It was a chair, simple, sturdy, unfinished. He didn't measure twice or polish the edges. It wasn't perfect, but it stood. When he was done, he sat in it and closed his eyes. The ghosts were still there, his father's voice, his mother's scream, the woman's calm whisper, but they had grown quiet, like a chorus that had finally sung itself empty. He breathed, slow and steady, the way people do when they realize they've survived. Outside, rain began to fall, light and rhythmic, washing the city clean. He didn't flinch at the sound. He let it fill the room, let it settle on his skin. Let it remind him that not all things that fall break something. Some things fall so something new can grow. And for the first time since that night, he felt it, the smallest pulse of peace. Faint but real, like the world had forgiven him before he'd learned how to forgive himself. He whispered into the dark, "It's over." And this time, the silence that followed didn't hurt. It answered.